Hello and welcome to another Bull and Specs. I say another, this might be your first. Anyway, I'm Adrian Lacey and my comrade in arms is...
Shane O'Connor. This could be my last. Let's see how things pan out, shall we? I don't know.
Oh, but don't say that.
I can't believe it's episode 7. This is it's whizzing along, isn't it? Really, it's I don't know if it's...
It sure is.
It's going as
Although,
long as yeah.
We've got, sorry, after you.
No, I was going to say, as long as it's going quickly for everybody, that's the main thing, isn't it? It's when one person is enjoying it and everybody else is saying, actually, it's dragging for us, that's when it becomes a problem. But hey, there you go.
Well, there's the old saying about why is it that time seems to pass slower in the company of accountants and estate agents, which is a great way to alienate your accountants and estate agents in the audience. So yeah, I distance myself from that remark.
Presumably, though, they're listening on sort of downtime, so they just think of themselves as normal citizens, don't they, I guess, really. Yeah. Anyway, if you've not heard this podcast before, we normally start by asking each other how our weeks were. And ever the gentleman, I'll start.
It's always about you, isn't it?
How was your week, Saucy?
Oh, cheeky. Well, it nearly was a bit cheeky and saucy, funnily enough, yesterday. I am taking, not for the first time in my life, swimming lessons, but it's the first time I've ever had one-on-one, if you'll pardon the expression, swimming lessons. Always keen to improve my appalling technique, and I was just about to go into the pool. The time had indeed been ticking away too quickly, and about to go into the pool to meet my tutor again, and I realised I had a hole in my trunks where there shouldn't be a hole.
I was going to say there should be 3, shouldn't there, so you can get them on.
Well, yeah, exactly.
But other than that, you had a fourth hole, the fourth dimension. I've got to ask, front or back?
Well, it's almost as bad as it could. Well, no, it was back or lower back, shall we say, euphemistically.
Yeah. We're with you. We're with you all the way. So, how did you? How did you did that thing, didn't you? When you pull them out, because they ride.
Put my finger through them. What is that thing that you do that I'm not sure if I did?
Do you know what I mean? You know, you get rideage on the old Budgie Smugglers, and you think, oh, these are a bit tight. So you just kind of give them a little bit of a tug out of harm's way. I can't believe the euphemisms I'm using. I'm doing really well.
Fantastic.
This if Just a Minute had a euphemism round,
you'd have won it.
I'd have won about 6 times over. Yeah, do you know what I mean? So did you kind of think, oh, they're a bit...
I think I was possibly trying to free them from riding up. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
A wedgie?
Yeah, rideage. Yeah, wedgie. Yeah.
Okay, yes. Because we're so delicately, in that British way, tiptoeing around the topic.
I think it's great.
And there's that brief moment where you think, well, maybe no one else thinks like this. I thought, can I just, as it were, ride this one out? But then I realised they're black trunks, but the very white... washing instructions was showing through the hole.
Oh, man.
So there was no way I could finesse it.
That's a double whammy, isn't it, really? I mean,
there were many whammies going on.
There was a triple whammy, isn't it, really? In fact, there were kids in the pool shouting, Daddy, look at that man's whammy. It's not right.
You will get me arrested sooner or later.
I wonder, we'll have to get the name, before we finish the podcast this week, of the your local newspaper so we can look the story up. Find out what really happened.
No, fortunately for me, you're not allowed to take photos for the very reason there may be children in the pool.
Yeah.
But I did the quickest about turn I've ever done in a swimming pool, and fortunately they sell trunks at reception. They jolly well do, and thank goodness, because otherwise I was thinking I'll just have to make a cock and bull and specs story up. See what I did there? Just a cover story, because you know, I've not been well. I didn't want to mention that, but I was going to mystically be ill again for the tutor, despite having texted her an hour before.
I was going to say, and what about your instructor? How did your instructor do? Because was there a moment where you kind of like, she waved and went, Adrian, over here, and you like kind of like looked at her
and had to reverse,
put your hand around the back, and then went straight back in. He did say he wanted a shorter lesson this week, but I didn't think he was going to get in.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
man.
There is no it's not like the driving test where you can do a theory lesson.
No. Can you swim at all then? Is that a rude question?
Yeah. I can get through it's not so rude when you consider my style, but efficient I am not, and Olympic standard I have never been.
Okay, so you just want to kind of you want to develop rather than learn in it.
I think that would be a kindly way of putting it, but yes.
Let me ask
but
you
in answer to your question, she hadn't clocked me, thank goodness.
So you managed to do, and then
So I reversed out.
What did you get black ones as well to replace, or were they?
I did, not for continuity, but because you can have any colour you want if you're a bloke, as long as it's black. It's the Henry Ford school of swimming trunks.
I love it. So, because that would have been worse again, wouldn't it, if she'd have thought, hang on, I'm sure he's wearing a different colour. He's come back and changed his trunks. What's the matter?
There's no continuity here. What's going on?
Crazy. No.
Anyway, enough about my week.
No, we can never have enough of this. This is one of the best ones we've ever had. No, I wanted to just a quick one. This is my straw poll as I go along. Did you originally learn to swim at school or not?
I did, yes.
Okay.
We had what the school called a crash course, and my dad, who was the king of puns, I don't know if you notice, exactly. Is that the sort of thing your dad would have said?
What a guy! No, but he deserves some kind of.
You would have got on well.
A splash course, that's fabulous. No, it's just because I don't think they do it very often with a lot of the schools who kind of knocked it on the head because of cutbacks or whatever they say this week. They're not doing that kind of thing, which I think is a real shame, isn't it? Because I think it's a real life skill, learning to swim. Anyway, as we gently move away from that image of Adrian in his black
mincing
Speedo,
backwards into the changing
shouting, "Oh, matron, I've got a hole in my dress." We'll move swiftly. Mine's quite boring and pedestrian by comparison, or actually, no, it's vehicular rather than pedestrian. I had to tax my car this week.
And do what to it? Sorry,
tax my car. For people who don't see, I wonder if they listen in the United States, think, what do you tax your car? What's that all about? It's a similar kind of thing to tags, isn't it? They have tags in the US. And they have, I don't know what they do across Europe. Do you know what France and Germany, do they have a similar kind of thing? Do they? I'm not sure.
I imagine they would, but I'm sorry, no expert on that.
But basically, you used to get a little disc, and I really feel I'm being shortchanged now when you don't get a disc anymore. Did you get that feeling as well? When you get it. But at least I've got something. I've got a little round disc, and you display it in the window of your car, and that'd say that you've paid a certain amount of road duty, which would go to the upkeep of the major highways and byways, the motorways and the big trunk roads. And you used to get, and then all of a sudden they went, "Oh, I'm going to get rid of the disc." What? Why are you going to get rid of the disc? That's the worst thing you can do, because at least I'm coming away. Actually, a mate of mine, a funny story, his wife had to go and tax her car, and they used to do different colours for different months, didn't they? So you could see at a glance
gosh, yes.
who was what. And he told his wife, he said to his wife, she just had a brand new sports car, a red one. And he said, when you go into the post office, he said, when you tax it, he said, ask them for a red one to match the car. She did. I'm sorry, madam. You could only if you bought in a certain month or whatever. But anyway, yeah. So they got rid of. So I had to tax it, and you get absolutely nothing in return. And then I was thumbing through the news the other day. Number of unwanted vehicles in the UK trebles. Untaxed, not unwanted. Untaxed vehicles in the UK trebles after they get rid of the tax disc. Why would they do such a thing?
You could have told them, couldn't you? That wouldn't work.
I just thought it was bonkers, the whole idea. But and for people who don't know, if you don't pay your tax on your car in the UK, they don't fine you. Basically, what they do is they'll come round your house and they'll put a hole in the back of your Speedos. And
I thought you meant the speedometer.
No, and to make sure that that
there's
you pay
Zogs
next time
actually.
as
I
well.
have to say.
Zogs. I don't even. No, I've got to. I was going to say I don't even want to know what they are, but I've got to know what they are. Tell me, can I find them online? Would I look those up? Would they? If I? How do you spell that?
At your own personal risk.
I bet it's double G.
I think you could probably
it?
guess. It is double G. Of course,
I knew it would be.
That's not a size, by the way. That's the spelling.
Double G. You trawl the pool. They're so big as you go along. Get rid of all the plankton.
I'm a danger to tuna as well.
West Adrian is just emptying the tuna out of his trunk. I'll be back in a minute. Give me a second. Just wait until it loads up.
Oh, yeah. Pause the show.
Oh, yeah. I can't imagine. Oh, no. Oh, okay. Have you got
people
long legged
enjoying,
ones or not?
Well, it's a thigh length. No.
Thigh length. Yeah, you can get thigh length ones, apparently. I just thought I'd mention it. Anyway, sorry. We started off with your weird and wonderful week, and we ended up with it as well. That's our week, anyway. It's the Bull and Specs podcast with Shane O'Connor and Adrian Lacey. And one thing we didn't mention at the start of this podcast, Adrian, this is a kind of this is a budget special, I suppose, in a way, isn't it? Because in the UK, this week we've had our autumn budget, which I don't. And again, I should have looked this up before we came on air. But I don't. Do other countries around the world, is this a common thing where they kind of set out fiscal policy for the year once or twice a year? Do you know?
Again, not my expert field, but I mean they'll have ways of doing it, but it may be kind of phased across different chunks of time, I think. Yeah,
but what we can tell you about in the UK, this is a big thing, as I say, this is basically where taxes are set, isn't it? And hopefully, I was going to say budgets are balanced, but I mean, you've got no chance of that, have you, in this country, really? I wouldn't have thought. But it can cover any topic that covers the public life, really, I suppose, in a way, doesn't it? And there's been some interesting topics this time round. Should we start off with the housing market?
Yes, let's.
Because they've changed, again, people listening outside the UK, I think, you've just got the most weirdest, maddest taxation system. We've got a thing called stamp duty, which is essentially a tax that you pay if you've done well, worked hard, and bought a house, and then it's accrued a higher value, you will pay a taxation, which is a stamp duty. But of course, the problem with this, with stamp duty, in essence, is it very often it can harm first-time buyers entering into the market. Now, the current government, they've abolished stamp duty for all first-time buyer purchases up to £300,000. Now, the reaction in this neck of the woods, in the Midlands, I've got to tell you, Adrian, I suspect it's not the same for where you are down south, was first-time property, 300,000.
Yeah. Yeah,
I guess it wasn't the same for you because
they say it with the same intonation, but what they mean in London is that you can't get anything for 300 grand. That's mad. You can't get a shoebox for that.
They do say the same thing, but they mean something completely different.
Yeah, the opposite.
Yeah,
it's a funny way, but it just shows you how a national policy, even in a relatively small nation like this, is it's virtually impossible to. You literally cannot please all the people all the time, can you?
No. I mean, the interesting thing is that with house building in this country now, some people say that there is a housing crisis. They call it a housing crisis. There's an underfunding in the area of house building, and there aren't enough houses. Some people say actually that's because we've got an increase in population because there is an increase in mass migration. So they believe that that's the case. And some people believe somewhere in the middle. All that you do know is that there's a lot of builders sitting on land banks, Adrian, and not building a damn thing, are they? And that's a problem for everybody because that blights a community until they've actually built it because nobody presumably wants to live next door to a building site.
And then also this is extended. It turns out the stamp duty. For the first £300,000 of the purchase price of the properties goes up to £500,000. I didn't say that very clearly, but that must be a cause of even greater shock in the Midlands and outside of London and the South East.
Yeah,
that we're talking about £500,000 worth of home.
Yeah,
with effectively you could see it as a sort of government subsidy, and that's way out of the realm of first-time purchases, isn't it? £500,000 squids.
Yeah, I mean, in this neck of the woods, you could buy a fairly large village or a small town for £500,000. Perhaps not that, but yeah, it is. And do you know, it shows how divided we are as a nation as well. Is that the one size fits all can't work because London and the South East are one entity, and the rest of the UK pretty much. I think. Would you agree with that, or would you see that differently from your perspective?
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a sort of, I think, semi-serious campaign. This is getting into the treacherous area of Brexit, the B word, but there was something trending, #Londependence. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Did you pick up on that?
Yeah.
Which was people, some serious, I think, or some more serious than others, talking about London independence, as in being a kind of city-state.
Yeah.
So, but even if that were never to happen, and you just think that's just barking, or, won't happen in a month of Sundays or a year of them, actually, in essence, that's what it already is, you could say, in some ways. In terms of prices, is that exactly what you're talking about, yeah.
The housing thing and trying to kickstart the economy in terms of housing just shows to me how out of touch politicians are, and I speak from personal experience where I've seen this happen. They were talking about a compulsory purchase of land from property developers' land banks if they didn't build on them. And that isn't the problem. And I've seen this with a housing development that I watched quite closely of 1,000 houses they wanted to build, which is quite a significant area. It was a farm, believe it or not, and there is a sadness in my heart that we're building housing estates on farms now, because you think there has to be better land than a working farm that you give a farmer however million for to move his cattle somewhere else. I think he's desperately sad, but there you go. That's another story for another day. But 1,000 houses, and what happens is only the big builders can build on a plot size of 1,000 houses. So what they did, they said, well, there aren't any big builders because they're all on projects already, so there's no big builders. So the reason these houses didn't get built wasn't because there weren't any builders, it was because the small builders all got together and they said, right, we'll build that plot over there, brilliant. We'll build that plot over there, brilliant. And they all cut all the plots up for each other. And then somebody said, who's putting the sewers in? And all the small builders went, well, I'm not, because I can't afford it. And they went, oh, okay. Who's putting the roads in? And all the small builders went, well, we're not, because we can't afford it.
Yeah.
And it all went on ice. And that's it. And it's a stalemate then. So unless you've got a big builder who have got the monopolies, it's not going to move forward. So this idea of spending money to buy the land, that isn't what they want to do. What they want to do is actually use the money to put the infrastructure in on the land, and then the builders would build on it.
Yeah.
It just
if we
shows
build it, they will come.
It just shows me that the politicians don't know what they're doing, really, to be honest with you. Anyway, that's housing. The NHS, £10 billion. I know we're going to fall out over this one.
Well, I don't know that we are. Well, we kind of touched on NHS funding previously, didn't we? But yes, one can't ever imagine a time when the NHS isn't asking for more money, and what you could put on the NHS budget, people's demands on it are virtually limitless. So, I think we've got some area of agreement on that. I don't know that 2.8 billion does it, or they were asking for 4 billion, weren't they? Which I assume was pretty pronto was it in this year? But the headline figure is an extra 10 billion investment in this Parliament, so that's a few years. But yes, I know your strong feelings about. If I was to put it into a headline for you, it would be what? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Go on.
NHS wasting money hand over fist in certain areas.
Yeah. I think until there's some accountability, and I don't blame the people who work in the NHS, because they are only doing what they've been programmed and trained and encouraged to do. But I do worry about the people at the top of the NHS, and I guess this is the politicians. I guess again is how they're leading the people who are doing the treatment and the care second to none in the world. But the idea that the NHS can, like the police, can be all things to all men. So, if you're feeling a bit fed up, you can go to your local casualty and get the same amount of attention. Is not realistic, is it? You have to say, these are the things we can do, these are the things we can't do, and very clearly draw those lines so everybody knows what the situation is. And you're just going to be throwing money away until you actually lead them in a better way. And I think that's the problem. And it comes back to all sorts of stuff as well in terms of equipment. Did I tell you the story about the Zimmer frame I've got in the garage?
Oh yeah, well they didn't want to take it back.
Don't want it. They reckon to take it back and to clean it and to make it safe. I mean, it's not safe. It's a bloody Zimmer frame, for God's sake. What's it going to do? Burst into flames? But to make it safe and to clean it and all the rest of it is more expensive, Mr. O'Connor, than it is to have it back. and I was going to drive it over there. So it wasn't even going to cost him anything on the bus, was it? Do you know what I mean?
Oh, gosh.
So you think multiply that by how many Zimmer frames they own, and you got some idea of the problem. I just wondered, the £350 million for this winter that they're making available, are they trying to be ironic choosing 350
Yeah, is that on the side of a bus?
That was the number on the side of the bus, wasn't it, where they were talking about Brexit? We'll give £350 million to the NHS, although that was a weekly figure. This is for the winter by the look of it, isn't it? So yeah. What are you saying? The investment 2.8 drop in the ocean? You reckon 2.8 billion?
Oh God, no, I wouldn't use that phrase. Let's remind ourselves. Billions aren't what they were when we were kids, are they?
True.
They literally have become smaller. They were a million, and this is where we have to sync up with our American audience. Well, we are in sync now as a nation. I'm not sure what year it happened. So it's quite a long time ago, maybe even late 70s, was it? So suddenly a billion became 1,000th of what it was. But it's still a heck of a lot of money, isn't it? So,
still a lot, isn't it? You wouldn't eat it, if you turned it into eggs and had to eat it.
That's a lot of eggs.
You'd be quite egg bound, as my mum used to say. I tell you what, no matter what happens, you wouldn't get your swimming trunks on. I tell you that.
Okay, after that jingly little breather, a reminder you're with Bull and Specs. It would be lovely if you subscribe to us. We're on numerous platforms, aren't we? Even more than King's Cross and St Pancras combined. Anyway, shall we do that at the end of the show? A little reminder about how you can receive us?
Yeah, because we've got two versions. We've got one you can listen to if you're going to take us to the gym, or if you want to sit down in your dressing gown with a cup of cocoa, you can sit and watch us as well. So we'll give you more details of that at the end anyway. So yeah, talking the budget, we've got our budget special this week, and just give us
we are the budget smugglers, aren't we? I could have sat here in those very trunks, couldn't I? But fortunately, I didn't think of that.
We name each episode, if you've seen the one in Vision, and it's never difficult to decide what it's going to be called.
What the main theme is.
Never.
It suggests itself. Anyway, I want to briefly raise, if I dare, the B word of Brexit. So two lots of B's, B and B.
Because this appeared in the budget,
and
didn't
Brexit.
it?
Yeah. Now, I would say, in terms of grabbing the headlines, it didn't. But it's there in the small print in a couple of ways. There's an extra $3 billion to come for Brexit preparations over the next 2 years. I don't know about you, but I think that's been left sort of hanging fairly vaguely, which might or might not, depending on your views, be quite convenient to the Chancellor not to spell out too much detail. What do you think?
It sounds like a hemorrhoid cream, doesn't it? Preparation Brexit.
Well, I mean, I could mention the fact that part of my upbringing was funded by my dad working on the packaging for Preparation H.
You never.
I see you shaking your head.
Because you never cease to amaze me. Every time you open, particularly with your family, every time you open your mouth, you say something that just blows me away. It's incredible. I never look at.
I shouldn't mention it, should I?
Is it still the same packaging? Do you know?
I doubt it. I doubt it. These things change every couple of years. Well, I mean, can you still get Preparation H? I don't even know if it's on the market or indeed a legal substance these days.
We'll have to get. Do you know what? I'll send them a note and let them know they get a mention in this week's podcast and see. We could be coming to you from Preparation H next week. Who knows? All right, £3 million for
£3 billion quid.
Billion rather. Yeah,
and the rest, 3,000 million. Brexit preparations.
Vague, innit?
Whatever they are.
Exactly.
I wonder whether it's the cost of the legal side of things, because whether you're pro or anti Brexit, or you couldn't give a so and so, and you're bored witless. The learned silks they're paid by the hour, are they not? Mm-hmm. And there's an awful lot of legal wrangling going on as we speak, and going on, no doubt, for the next few years.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because I was quite keen to unravel the costs of the Olympics, because I think that is a complete scandal, not only with this country but all around the world. And if you look at the countries that the Olympics have been to, and left their legacy in a worse shape than they promised them they would, it's quite a number of countries now, not least us, in terms of how much it cost us and how much it ran over budget. So when you talk about £3 billion, you do wonder whether it is going to be 3 billion or nearer to 15 or 30 billion, or what it's going to be, or where the money's going to go, or whether we'll ever find out, or whether it'll disappear down a black hole in the Treasury. And that's the worry, isn't it? Is that to actually follow the trail of this, Adrian, is for the ordinary bloke or woman, it's quite a feat, isn't it? Really.
Well, I mean, it's quite a feat for highly trained investigative journalists. But here's the thing: I don't claim to be one of those, but I am reading something from the small print. This was tweeted out by BBC's political editor Laura Koonsberg, but she in turn was quoting from someone else who has been sort of rifling around in the small change. In the year, sounds like a song, doesn't it? In the year,
not 25, is it?
No, not quite, but 2022
yeah.
to 2023. It's quite hard to say, and to, especially if you've been up all hours, to try and grasp that. Anyway, it's a few years away, and crucially, it is outside the transitional period, which is expected to be 2 years on top of I'm making this sound even more complicated than it is. We're meant to be out of the EU March 2019. If you bung on another 2 years allowing for a transitional period, whatever you feel about that, that seems possible or likely. This is actually another year later to that. In the small print, the government has allowed for a contribution to the EU of 3.5 billion. So, quite close to the figure we're talking about for the next 2 years. But crucially, that's beyond the transitional period, still paying money into the EU. So that's an interesting one found in the loose change.
And I've got this. My whole argument with the whole Brexit thing is that I would rather see us out of Europe. I'll be honest with you. I for the reason, without going into that whole argument, is that I think that it's become something that we didn't sign up to. We signed up to something, and by creeping legislation and creeping territories, it's become something completely different. That's another story for another day. In terms of the rules and we have to do this, it's all completely arbitrary. We're making this up as we go along. Let's accept that, because it is a fact, isn't it? We've never done it before. Nobody's ever managed to do it before. So all of these rules and things that have to happen, says who? What happens if we say, do you know what? Take an attitude like the French does to Europe, and we say, we'll pick the bits that we like and we'll discard the bits that we don't like, which is generally what they do in terms of EU legislation. You say, well, what's going to happen? What are they going to do? Declare war on us? Are they going to not trade? Well, they're not going to not trade with us, because they want to sell us stuff as much as they have to buy stuff off us. I mean, that's how the whole trade works. They're not doing it because we've got high cheekbones, are they? They're doing it because we've got stuff that they want. Yeah, well, we have, but I mean that's by the by. Do you know what I mean? So to me, you kind of think, well, says who? And whenever I hear these things, Adrian, I always think, yeah, says who? Is that wrong of me to think says who? I mean, you're saying that. Well, let's not do that.
Yeah. Well, I think and this really is a theme for another day. People might or might not have read into what I've said previously, if they've heard what I've said previously. I'm on the other side of the fence, but I think that's interesting because we're kind of balanced either side of the debate as far as
and we're probably
goes.
The only two people having a conversation, and we can still talk the week afterwards as well, because it all gets pretty nasty, doesn't it? It
does, and yes, I can get a bee in my bonnet about it. Let's stick to the budget thing regarding Brexit. The interesting thing here is, it's who is accountable, and literally who can see the accounts. I mean, how much is being clocked up by the hour by my learned friends? Yeah. Reading the small print. I'm not saying we don't need them, because it is fiendishly complicated. It's 40 years of legislation you're trying to undo.
40 years
that was
of
never.
hurt.
Well,
hang on, I've got a song coming on. I'm going to just make a few notes of the lyrics there for that one. Yeah, 40 years of hurt. Yeah, you're right. But that's and I wonder, and the whole point is, by the time we've retired and gone or whatever, the next generation comes along. And they'll go, oh, do you remember that? And we'll still never unravel it. And that's how it works, unfortunately, isn't it? That maybe it'll never be unravelled. I don't know. But
my hope is, at the very least, we'll get a sitcom out of this. Yes, Minister, yes, Prime Minister, the thick of it, in the loop.
Yeah.
With knobs on.
The problem is, it's all too close and it's all too raw, and it just ain't funny at the moment, is it? Whichever side of the conversation you're on, you're thinking, well, we either need to do something or we need to not do something, but we need action rather than sitting there and all staring at each other saying, "Oh, look, the bill's going up."
Yeah,
crazy.
Yeah.
Can I throw one in, which was a bit of a bugbear with budgets for mine, and because it's an evergreen. Booze and fags. I was amazed to see, because I thought, oh, this would be the year. They've got so many more important fish to fry. Booze and fags, tax on them. They won't even bother. They'll just go, oh, we'll leave it as it is or whatever, because smokers are pretty much the pariahs of society, aren't they? In this country, it's interesting. If you go to Southeast Asia, they've got that old-fashioned, some would say, irresponsible approach to smoking. Some would say devil-may-care approaches, but they just smoke, and nobody seems to. It's not a problem. You go to any country in Europe, you go to the United States, you go to wherever, and it's banned, and it's a bad thing to do. But we keep putting the fuel duty on the duty on fags and booze, and the smokers I get. What about the poor old drinkers? Do you ever kind of think, oh, it's a shame for them? Let them have a bit of time off, or not? The white cider's got a kick in this time, didn't they, for some reason?
Yes. Interesting. It's going to hit even harder in Scotland, isn't it, where they're going to go for minimum pricing, but that's a separate thing. Can you explain to me, excuse my ignorance, as a moderate drinker, I know everyone thinks they are, but I genuinely think I am, and I know you are. Yeah. What is white cider? Is it what you drink in the park from a paper bag?
I was going to ask you exactly the same, actually. I have no idea. Is it not made from apples? Because it would
white
be white
apples.
then, would it?
Well, apples are white on the inside, aren't they, generally?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what the difference would be. I have no idea what the difference would be between. And what are the other ones called? Are they called
non-white ciders?
Yellow ciders.
I got worried for a minute. I just wrote, this is a danger, too much or too little information and a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, or something like that. I read, beer will be frozen.
Yeah.
But I didn't read the words in front of it. So, yes. I'm not going for that. Not in the winter. Come on.
2 Guinness lollies and your best yellow cider, please, if that's all right.
And a chunk of porter.
Yeah.
No, it's duties on other ciders, wine, spirits, and on beer will be frozen. I like that. Sorry,
I was just going to say that I don't. Why is it always the drinkers and the smokers? What about the chunky monkeys as well? Why don't they say, well, fast food's going to get a kick in this time? Why don't you give them a rest and give it? I mean, like, I'm exactly self-like, but you know what I mean. I would be happy to say, okay, we'll have a Kentucky Fried Chicken tax or a McDonald's tax or something like that, just this time round, just to give the smokers and the drinkers a bit of a rest. That's all.
Yeah.
I thought the interesting one as well. Again, this is something only British politicians could do. Do you remember they would because I used to smoke, so I follow this quite keenly, and they used to put increased duty on fags, but not on cigars. Now, if that isn't looking after the rich...
Oh, how snobbery, yeah.
And
was it anything to do with when was Ken Clark the Chancellor by any chance?
I think he might be. But the upshot of that was you had all these kids behind the bike shed. They all looked like Winston Churchill smoking his giant Havana cigars.
And reading out his speeches from the war. We will fight them on the beaches.
We'll fight them on the playground.
We will never pay a duty on cigars.
Finally, then, should we just do a quick one as well? Personal tax and see where we are. It's interesting because, again, the tax allowances, tax-free, 11,850. I don't know what it is. It's about 10 grand, is it now? You can earn tax-free.
I think so. Yeah, so it's about another 10% on top.
Yeah, and then the higher rate threshold goes up, so you can earn up to £46,350 before you start to pay the higher rate of tax. So, I mean, for the worker, you're neither in or there, are you? Really, I suppose. Do you think? I don't know. I suppose if you're on minimum wage,
you notice it disproportionately the less you've got coming in.
Yeah. So I suppose. Trying to do something for everyone in that sense, really. So I mean that was the 2017. I mean, in a nutshell and in very brief, that was the 2017 budget and our quick review and look at it. I mean, just as a final word, how do you feel coming out of all that? Do you think, oh yes, there's what's the phrase we always use in the media? Is there something in it for you? Was that? Do you come away thinking, oh yes, I feel better off, or no, I feel worse off, or that just whizzed past me? Can I tell you quickly mine?
Yeah, please do.
Just whizzed past me, really. I kind of thought there's not a lot in there for me, not a lot that's going to kill me. Meh. Kind of meh. MEH for me, really.
MEH, yeah. Very,
what about you?
That's what the young kids say, isn't it? Yeah. Well, certainly I'm giving up white cider, but then I haven't worked out what it is, so I'm not sure what I'm giving up. But, yeah, fairly neutral to the Lacey household, I think I would have to say, in summary.
Obviously until Brexit happens and you go to live in France, but then that's another story for another day. That's it for another edition of the Bull and Specs podcast. Thanks for being with us, and as always, there's loads of ways that you can catch up with this and previous episodes of the show, aren't there, Adrian?
There are indeed. I mean, you can have the audio, which is there in all its splendiferous glory. I don't know if that's a word. Spreaker.com. Basically, you just misspell speaker.
Yeah,
and
put an R in there. Yeah, put an R in there, and there's a search box at the top, isn't there, at the top of the page?
Yes. Now here's the trick: use an ampersand, so it's Bull ampersand Specs. So not the word spelt out in full AND, but ampersand Bull and Specs.
Okay. Same on YouTube. If you want to go and have a look at the video and see the two of us in conversation, same audio, but with the pictures. If you go to YouTube and do the same thing again, just search for Bull and Specs and don't use the word and, use the ampersand, and you should find us no problem at all. But as I say, that's it for this edition. We'll see you next time.
Cheers for now. Bye.